enough of all the rah-rah. Ladies and gentlemen, very funny, tear the roof off good. Pat Godwin is here. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you said yes. It's good to talk to you.
It's past my bedtime, but I said yes, I would stay up.
That's right. Now you're a morning radio guy again. That's actually one of the questions I have. We can go right to that. You've been on and in and out of radio and stand up and for years and years and years. Give me a little bit of background. What's been your path here?
I was a serious musician for 10 years and had a couple of albums out in the eastern Pennsylvania area. I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Then I went down to Philly and kind of made a big splash, so to speak, with the college crowd, doing my own original stuff. Some of it pretty dark and moody, but then I was kind of funny in between songs. Todd Glass used to come watch me perform at a place called Smokey Joe's. And he said to me, your songs are great, but you're really funny in between songs. You should do an open mic. And I was like, I was kind of mad at the time because what do you think? You like the Joe Pesci? Oh, you think I'm funny? I'm a serious songwriter. He goes, no, you got something. And he took me, and Todd Glass took me down to downtown Philadelphia and to a place called the Comedy Factory Outlet. And I did my first open mic and I just strung a bunch of impressions together. None of it was that funny, but it worked. And a local radio guy saw me, very first open mic, and said, hey, can you come on our morning show and do these funny songs on a regular basis? And I lied and I said, yes.
Yeah, of course you do.
And that was
first open mic you got a gig from? That's unheard of in the history of comedy.
This Comedy Factory Outlet was set up in such a way. It was a tiny Greek theater. It was bomb-proof. And I can say the impressions were strong. Nothing funny about what I strung together at that point. But the guy saw that I could do the impressions. I mean, I did Billy Joel, I did Springsteen, Tom, all classic rock impressions, Tom Waits, one after the other. And the guy just said, hey, come on our show. And I remember saying, yeah, I'll be there. And on Monday morning, I was on the Morning Zoo in Philadelphia. And WMMR is the biggest AOR station in the country. They've won lots of awards. And I didn't even know what I had fallen into. It was my first huge break. And that lasted 6 years until we got fired when Howard Stern came into our market. He was our first syndicated market. That was his first syndicated market. Took him 2 years to beat us. And then we all got canned. And
Wow.
And I went to Howard Stern the 2 weeks later and started to do stuff for him, like not on a regular basis. I would send him songs and I was on his show live a bunch of times. That was kind of exciting. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
It's like you crammed a whole career into those first few beats. It's crazy how many.
Well, I would do these songs on the Morning Zoo, and we were, and then on the weekend, as it turned out, I would be asked to perform in these comedy clubs. And because they thought I had the energy and the time, they would put me. I never emceed. I went right, boom, to closing because I was on the radio, and I had nothing. I mean, I had nothing. So I was forced to improvise, to work the crowd, and which I did back at, in the music halls and the bar rooms where I do my original music. So I took that, what Todd Glass called that in-between song pattern, and I was scared to death. I maybe had 10 minutes of the songs, and then I would just improvise. And some nights it would, thank God that some of the clubs in Philly were so easy that I got lucky. But when I got outside gigs and had to really work, like I would go in the South on the weekends sometimes and fly down to Tampa or something. It was like terrifying, and I finally would cobble together some sort of 45-minute nonsense that I could sort of get away with.
I love that. That's so great.
Yeah.
Now, was Todd Glass a comic at the time?
Yeah, he was a Philadelphia comic who if you notice his fake anger in the way that he performs, it's really a Jimmy Shubert Philadelphia type of fake anger that was kind of originated in downtown Philadelphia. Todd was a maniac. He would drag me to bar mitzvahs, birthday parties, afternoon shows, stuff, and he was just a machine. And one of my really, really good friends, and he's the one who just took me to my first open mic saying, I know you got the presence on stage, now get up there and just wing it, and you're going to be fine, because he saw that in me as opposed to my serious songs, I guess. And he opened up every door for me, really.
I love that. Now, for the people who are watching and might not know, Todd Glass is he's a comics comic. He's a great, a freaky good stand-up comic. What a cool,
He takes
magical,
and
lucky
he took chances back then too, just like he does now. He was nuts. He was
right?
really nuts,
I
running
can't
out in the
imagine him
audience.
not doing that. He was sort of born from the womb that way, right?
Yeah. I mean, and his whole life is comedy. I swear to God, I've never seen anyone more excited about it, more a student of the craft, and just a complete joy to be around, really.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What's Stern like?
Really nice, off mic, like a gentle, taller than you think, a
Right?
sweetheart, a sweetheart. He asks you about your family and your life and your girlfriend, and she's really very attractive. Your girlfriend in the lobby, yeah, that's my girlfriend from Miami. Her name's Kim. And then you're on the air, and it's like, geez, Godwin's got this gorgeous girlfriend. Look at him. I mean, it doesn't really. And I'm like, whoa, what happened to the nice guy? So there. So my point is, there are two sides to him. I've never seen a more caring, gentle man, and so wonderful to his daughters. The way he would talk about them, and because I did a bunch of live shows. I went to Cleveland when he beat the guy from Cleveland. We all flew to Cleveland. Me sitting next to David Lee Roth and a whole plane of people I don't belong with. That was a really, really heady time. And I swear to God, Stern is like Big Bird. He's got a bit of a hunch, and I think
Right?
he's got to be. I don't know how tall he is, but it's intimidating.
Yeah.
I mean, but he is just a gentle, thoughtful soul off the air.
Right, right. Yeah. I stood next to him ish once in Sirius. He was coming in, I was going out, and I mean, if you walked onto a bus or into a bar where you were, you would turn and go, look, that guy's crazy tall.
Yeah, it's kind of intimidating. You're like, oh, I didn't expect that.
Right.
And the way he positions himself in the studio too, not only is he tall, he's like up here and you are way, way down here. And he's extremely good at what he does.
Oh,
he's a wonderful interviewer. I never was on board with how evil they got. I mean, they would ask me to do some songs that were just way beyond my taste, and I did them at the time, and I feel terrible about at least 4 of them.
Well, that
do you know Mancow from Chicago?
I did a show once years ago. Yeah.
Well, his poor father passed away, and Stern wanted to do songs about that, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I can't even say out loud the direction that he wanted me to take in one of the songs. It was just evil, and I would constantly fight them on that. I was kind of their little monkey for a while when it came to the songs, and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
That's fascinating. Oh wow.
Yeah. I'd be on the road and send them stuff. They'd ask for stuff, and Stern's only he never really changed lyrics. Sometimes he did add the evil, but when I would finally finish this thing and send it to him, he would go, "Okay, give me another one and enunciate." They were, instead of like doing an affectation or a vocal impression, he always made sure that which is Tom Griswold too. To this day, I take the Stern advice and I bring it to the Bob and Tom show, because Tom is beyond Stern's even keenness for making sure that things you know what you're doing. People can hear what you're doing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's a student. He's a little craftsman. He loves the detail. That's right. Yeah. When I did Mancow, I don't know if I love what Mancow does, but he's good at what it is. And I have to say, I was really impressed. I don't know if you remember this, but this is my Mancow memory. He was adamantly pro waterboarding. Do you remember this?
No.
And then on air, he did a stunt where he was waterboarded. And in 5 seconds, his opinion changed. And he was very vocal about being against waterboarding after that. Isn't that interesting?
Once he had it happen to him.
Yeah. He goes, no, literally, you feel like you're drowning. It's the most horrific thing I've ever experienced. It's absolutely torture. And he changed his whole mind about it. And he didn't hide from the fact that he was on the other side, the minute prior. He owned it. It was kind of interesting.
Well, I was on Mancow's show. Now, let me tell you, I have now done MMR and Stern, and I've done Stern a lot. Now I'm kind of trying to be a real comedian, and I'm taking jobs all over the country because I went through a divorce, and the Comedy Zone took me and worked me every night. Then I started to do different things, and I got up to Zanies. And Brian Dorfman, who was running Zanies in Chicago, took me to the Mancow show, and I go, oh no, this guy's going to figure out in the first 5 minutes that I'm the guy who sang songs about his father. Because I ended up doing 2 songs, and the whole and he never really put it together. But the whole time I'm thinking, when am I going to get the bum's rush? And he's going to go, wait a minute. You know, he identified it as a Stern song because Stern didn't probably say my name enough. He would just play things.
Right.
And it always used to bug me because he'd play it as a part of his show and not say, oh, that was Pat Godwin. So I got lucky there, though. He just thought that was a Stern. And all we did was we promoted Zanies, and I got out of there and I told Brian Dorfman, he goes, oh my gosh, that would have been horrible. You know, having him find out who you really are.
I love it. I have a Brian Dorfman anecdote for you. I was working with Rodney Carrington in Nashville.
Yeah.
And Rodney was just destroying and destroying and destroying. And
oh, yeah.
So we go in to do radio. I was the middle act. And we do 2 or 3 things around. It's one of those buildings that has several stations in it. We come down, we're waiting to leave. And the woman we're waiting for the cab, and the woman at the desk goes, who are you guys? What are you doing here? And Rodney pretends to have a hat on and starts doing this corny dance. And he goes, we're the comics. And he's like dancing around. And he turns and he completely freezes. And he points to a woman who's sitting behind us who we hadn't noticed until then. He goes, you're Mary Chapin Carpenter. And it was. And he totally fell apart, and he literally couldn't speak. He literally goes, you ought to come to the show. It's like going to a show. And I pat him on the shoulder. I go, good pitch, Rodney. And then she laughed really hard because I released the tension of this crazy thing that was happening. It was hilarious to see the guy who was indestructible on stage night after night after night just completely fall apart when he saw like a country music hero, you know, sitting right there.
Well, you know, for as much as you and I perform and people perform, when you do meet someone that kind of inspired you, it can be breathtaking when they're right next to you. You're like, oh my God. And on the MMR and Stern and Bob and Tom, I've had a chance to stand next to some people that had, you know, really started me off inspirationally, you know, and it can be, I get really quiet. I've met Clapton, McCartney. I've met a lot of people. I got a chance to play with a lot of them too, and it always made me not funny, and very quiet.
That's funny. Quiet is your default. I think that's probably where I would go too. You're like, oh, nice to meet you, sir. I'll just go hide over here for a sec.
Well, you know, like in the green room with comedy, if I like the other comedian, I'm overly chatty. If for some reason we're not gelling, I'm completely quiet. There's no in between in the pre-show nerve thing with me. I'm either like yappity, 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 and probably pretty annoying, or the opposite.
That's a good segue to how we met. Let's cover this story. I want to hear your perspective on this.
This is so embarrassing.
This was the Comedy Corner?
In West Palm, yeah.
West Palm, okay. I was a brand new, I was like still like, you know, dripping with placenta. I had no business even being paid to do comedy. But they let me stay at the condo on the couch or whatever. And whatever, I did 10 minutes and opened up the shows for the weekend. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and I drove down. And you were headlining maybe one night or something. It was something, I think it was just the one time.
I don't remember being the one time, unless he had me in there for something special, or I usually did the whole week there, because I lived down in Florida at that time.
Yeah, that's your home. That's your neck of the woods. You probably worked that club 100 times. I've only been there a couple times.
Yeah.
So we get there, we shake hands, you and I chat, and then we realize right before the show starts that you don't have your guitar.
That's correct. And I'm a guitar act. And even to this day, if you take my guitar away from me, I can do time on stage, but I'm not as effective as I am with the guitar. But at that time, I was not only not as effective, I would have been a nightmare. I lived with a woman named Kim, and they lived on Star Island, and they were extremely wealthy. And here I am, the Irish, touring the country, making a couple $100 a night. It just didn't fit, but we were madly in love. And but the amount of wealth, they lived next to Gloria Estefan on Star Island, and they had a million cars, the Bentleys, and it was just insane. Their own chef. The movie Wild Things, where the two girls get naked in the pool. The movie Wild Things with Denise Richards.
Yeah.
That was their house. The Specialist was filmed at their house. Their house was used in a lot of. It's just insane. And the point of the story is, I got into my little Jeep, and for some reason, it wasn't. It was making. Maybe the oil was. I don't know. Something was wrong. And she was, "Oh, just take my Mercedes." So at the last minute, I'm all panicky. It's pre-show. I'm nuts the whole day. I have a horrible time before shows. I'm just insane. So here's where the insanity comes. I jump out of the Jeep because I think I'm a little bit late. I'm not. It's an hour drive. And I get into her car and drive to the Comedy Corner without a guitar in the trunk. And I get there, and we were chatting, and then I completely panic. Now, if you remember, the Comedy Corner had some odd theater next door. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yes.
And that's what somebody said, "Hey, this guy might have this guitar, you could use, and we'll mic it or something." And we ended up grabbing some crap guitar from the little theater that was next door doing Our Town or something. I don't know what they were doing. Do you remember any other details besides me being completely panicked?
What I remember.
Oh, you had a stretch.
I, of course, remember my part of it, which was, I have no business even doing professional comedy. And during the middle act, I do my little dog and pony show, hand it off to the middle act. During the middle act, he goes, "Hey, they're not back yet. So when you go back up, you just stay there until I give you the sign." And I was like, in my head, I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I already did my best. I only did my good 9 minutes. Wait." So
so I'm running around looking for I think that guy had to go to his house to get the guitar, and I went with him.
And I'd been around comedy enough that I knew the situation, and I literally, I go on stage and I do a couple jokes, and I literally see the guy in the back doing this. He's like, "Oh, the stretch sign," which is, I like in my head, I'm like, this is great that I'm being a professional comedian, but I also have a pretty short list of jokes that I know are good.
Don't we all?
And so I was like, I'll do this one. I'm very much in my head, like, it's one of those, you can see your body watching the scene of like, well, I can only do so much of this before I fall down and have nothing left to say. And sure enough, was a couple jokes that worked really well. And you came running back into the club, and the guy like gives me the light, and I hand it off to you and sit down. I've never been more relieved in my life. That was great.
I should have learned my lesson that night, and I'll tell you why. Because I thought, you know what? If that ever happens again, maybe you have to have an act that doesn't involve, that's not, the music isn't the delivery system for. Maybe you need to sit down and do yourself a 45. Let's say something ever happens again. You'd think I would have been so terrified that I would have done that, but I did not. Fast forward, I got a little fancier and I was doing better. And I used to travel with two guitars, when I was driving to stuff, not when I was flying to stuff. Two very expensive Taylor guitars. One was $3,500. The other was probably $4,000 Taylor guitars. And I traveled with these. So it was Sunday night in Charlotte, and it's the last night. We've done the big weekend. Sundays usually, as you probably know, when we used to do Sunday nights in clubs, it's kind of mess around, do material, have some fun night, and right?
I just talked to Pardo about that 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Sunday's where you really move your act forward. You put in different things. And that's the night where you can really get loose and you can try the new stuff. All the pressure's off.
Right.
So I go, well, I'm just going to leave the second guitar back at the hotel, which was, in downtown Charlotte at the Comedy Zone there. So they introduced me, and I always am I do a little jog to the stage with my guitar around me. I never have just gone up there by myself. It's always around me like a little blanket. So they introduced me, and I do my little jog, and some lady at that very moment was getting up to go to the bathroom, caught my foot, and I went flying on top of a $3,500 Taylor, smashing it completely.
Really?
Yeah, smashing it. I came up in such a way where I crushed it. Strings flying. Now the audience thinks that I'm one of the Three Stooges, and they go nuts with laughter. They go crazy thinking it's part of the act. I have never in my whole life I was terrified. I get to the stage. I said, folks, that wasn't a part of the act. Hey, go to they knew where I was staying in the hotel. I'm in room 315, grab the other guitar. So now I had 15 minutes of me and the audience. And really what I did was my setups for stuff that didn't require a musical outcome. And everything was fine. Everything was fine. But I do remember at about minute 14 going, hey, you know what? Get here soon. Otherwise, because I'm used to kicking it up a notch, and you're used to a certain response. And as a strict monologist, it just didn't seem as exciting as it was, and it was terrifying. And Tim Wilson told me, he heard about that story, and he said, that's why I don't travel with the expensive ones. And I learned that I travel with a $200 Yamaha now. I'm not even joking.
Really?
Yeah, I travel with a wonderful guitar that has a great pickup in it, but I don't have to worry about it. That was terrible.
Man, you got up there and killed that night. That was a long time ago. West Palm Beach. Yeah,
you know what?
It's hard to even define what it is, but there's a presence and a combination of funny and natural performing chops. I mean, you really can destroy a room in a way that can hurt a guy's feelings when he crawls up.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I think the live performing thing I cared about so much, and I was telling you this before. The rest of the day I had a real hard time with, but man, the live performing thing was really special and terrifying. And I always was so thrilled when the show was over and you did a good job. That feeling of, like you're on a tightrope. You took them here, you brought it down, you tried a ballad, you did this thing. And I have the ability, because I don't do pre-taped music, to cut a thing whenever I want to. Yeah. I can improvise, I can get out of things that don't work. And I hate long musical satires. I don't like people that do musical comedy, or they typically can just take it too long. Sometimes the joke is the joke and you got to move on. So I just learned a real choppy kind of
yours is pace, man. It's
Philadelphia style. And that came from just doing it so much after my divorce and the end of the radio career back in Philadelphia. It just came from being on stage constantly.
But hearing you say to me that you were anxious about doing well in the show and you were nervous during the day, that doesn't jibe with my memories of working with you on the road. You just seem so natural on the stage.
That's the only place I'm natural. I remember I used to work did you ever work in the Sanibel room for John Biddle or anything in Florida like that?
Wow, he also a long time ago, but I remember that. Yes.
Well, John Biddle used to run. He ran the Hilton Head Club, and I was pacing backstage before a show one time because he used to just go up for 5 minutes, and you'd do an hour and 15 in this boutique little comedy club in a strip mall that was wonderful in Hilton Head. And he and I are really good buddies. And we just struck up a conversation. The music was starting. It was exciting. It was packed in there. We're about to start the show, and we're talking about comedians. And I'm pacing back and forth. He goes, geez, I'm extra kind of nervous tonight. Who's the craziest person before a show? Who's just as nuts? He goes, you. I thought it really shocked me. I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's got to be much nuttier people than me. He goes, no, you're nuts. You keep asking about, is the mic okay? You just ask weird questions. And I realized, yeah, I'm back there. I walk back and forth. I overtune. I kind of shake my hands or do something goofy.
That's funny. I mean, you're a bit of an open book, wear your heart on your sleeve type. There must be other guys who are completely insane. They just keep it to themselves.
I thought they were more insane than me, but I do get worked up, and I liken it to kind of getting on the runway, and then when you're introduced, you take off. So there's that revving period. And I always used to like to hit that stage with something unique that threw me. I would never try to open with I would throw myself to keep myself in the moment, because I'm not a good enough actor to do the stuff that I've written as the way it should be intended. So I always would throw myself off. So I was always in the moment, or at least I would try to be. And that's why when your act isn't set in concrete, you can drive yourself nuts going, I don't even know what I'm going to open with. What should I, that's where my mind is. And I love that on stage, but I hate it off stage.
What do you have the same experience with radio? Because that's another place where you look totally at home. Actually, when I was just like winding up to do this, I went on to just make sure I had a couple of good questions to ask you. And I sort of went down this rabbit hole of watching clips from you on different radio shows. And you're so comfortable and you're so easy to talk to the other guys and know the beats in and out and songs and beats of things and back out, and they're riffing and you're laughing and able to all that is very hard to do well, and you make it look easy.
Well, you try to. What I do is I listen. I do prepare very well for the show, especially for Bob and Tom show I'm on now. I prepare for it. So, and even saying that, I go in at 4:30 a.m. and with an hour and a half to spare, and Tom and I will run ideas back and forth. And there's a lot of crazy writing that is a little terrifying. But what I do is I go, look, you do it to the best of your ability. You listen to people. Do it. Tom will throw me something, and I think we have enough of a rhythm where I kind of know where to start the intro and kind of just get in there and do it in a very, very slick radio way. And that comes from listening to other people and not being so obsessed about your own thing. Prepare your own thing, get it to the best of your ability at 6 a.m. Then from 6 to 10, be a member of a team. Listen to everybody. Don't look at your phone. And when you do listen to everybody, then you learn their rhythms. You learn what Josh from the Bob and Tom show may say. Josh will purposely try to throw me off, and it makes me howl. And then I've learned to use that as a rhythm. I know he's going to do something goofy during the song to get me to crack. Yeah. And I love that aspect of it. I know Tom may jump in. Sometimes they let these songs go from start to finish, but I'm prepared to listen at all times because it's really exciting. Because I'm working these guys, as you well know. You come on with us every Tuesday. You know how crazy it can be in there. You're trying to do a segment, and these guys are riffing on something that just happened, and you got to sit there and be a part of it. And sometimes it's mind blowing, how fun it is to be on a team like that,
Yeah, absolutely. They make it look easy. That's what I was trying to tell. I was trying to tell somebody that there's such a different skill set between, what I do on the show is a very well written, ideally well written, certainly something I worked on.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny little produced thing that has a lot of homework in.
Yes.
And then I do it and I leave. To be on a show and juggle those balls and keep them in the air for 4.5 hours is a completely different skill set. And it's almost impossible to do. People have no idea how hard it is to do that.
Yeah, it's actually very draining. And you don't realize, like, when that show's over, I sometimes get in the car, I'm like, oh, I could honestly fall asleep on the way home. And I realize it's because I go in there, like when you see a Peyton Manning, the way they prepare for a game. I came from like a football background in high school, and it kind of made me tough in regards to really focusing and treating it like comedy is a team sport. You prepare, and then anything can happen. If something may spark a song, be prepared to write it. Be prepared to take the chances that people offer you and be a part of the team. And I think when I see sports people being interviewed, not comedy people, I see sports people being interviewed, and I go, yes, tomorrow I have to have better focus. Let's get in there. On the drive down, maybe if I have to do a song that requires an impression I don't know, I'm just drilling that song in my head on the way down, like Peyton Manning would go over game films and playbooks. And that brings a certain confidence to the table, because you're working with really talented people who've been doing it a while and have seen every premise, these people, they've seen every fastball thrown at them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully they're generous souls, and they still join the fun, they're not
everybody wants people to succeed. Yes. And you succeed. So yeah, we enjoy having you on, and that can be a tough room though.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like any comedy room. There's some days that you come in and you're like, I'm the king of comedy. And the other days you're like, what happened? So, I mean, that happens in all comedy situations, right? There's the full range of possibilities.
I remember I'll tell you about a failure. when I first started doing the show, let's say it's the early 2000s, and Bob with the great laugh is in there, and Tom's in there, and I did a song called "Tell It to Oprah," and it was just about a guy who wasn't paying attention to his wife. Hey, tell it to Oprah, and I thought it was really funny, and I'd written it the night before. I was really excited about doing it. Now I did this song to zero laughter, even a cough, not a hiccup, not a. It was silence from the moment I started to the end. And now, as comedians, we got to have that savor thing. And I go at the end of the song, I go, geez, that could have used a few more laughs. And Bob, as quick as ever, goes, that could have used a few more jokes. And then the crowd, then the group died laughing at my expense, and it was then a moment.
Yeah, right.
It was then, but I mean, ever since then, I've never forgotten that. I make sure that my material has at least one laugh in it.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
I'm joking. I remember the pain of that, like it was yesterday. And I always think of that. I always make sure these things, I look over them and I go, okay, how can this be better? Because I never want to feel like I did that day.
Well, sometimes it's you. Maybe you wrote the song the night before, it wasn't ready yet. But sometimes it's the moment, and the comedy is such a delicate, beautiful chemistry, and sometimes it just doesn't quite line up for whatever reason, you know?
No, you're absolutely right.
Someone's in a bad mood, they fought with their wife before, and chick feels weird about something, and there's so many factors, and the connection isn't good, or somebody got bad news right before they walked in, or
it's a very human show, and since they've been doing it for so long, a lot of that comes through, and people I think really enjoy that. And you're absolutely right. We all have gone through some incredible things in our life, and every now you do bring that to the table. I mean,
sure.
When I was going through back surgery, I was miserable 2 weeks before. I don't know how I got through any of those shows. I remember looking at a video of one where I was grimacing while I was playing guitar. We all have our own stuff, right. and sometimes you still have to, you still have to do it.
And sometimes it's completely just random bad luck. One time I called, I'm doing my segment, just nothing. Like, just if it's a 1 to 10 laugh scale, it's 1, 2, 3, back to 1, 2. Never good, ever once. Hang up the phone. I'm like, fuck, I was funny in Buffalo with the same jokes in the last call. What happened?
Yeah.
Come to find out, Chad Zamuk was in there that day, and slammed his headphones down and walked off as my segment started. I didn't know that, and they didn't acknowledge it on the air. But all of that weird energy was in the space, and I'm like, hey, and then the Ravens, and everyone's like, nobody cares.
They didn't know what had actually happened. They weren't aware of all the things that go. Now when we do it, Josh will do a fake walkout. We all do a fake walkout, and we call it, okay, I'm gonna Zamuk on you. Like it's an inside joke. No one. Josh started it. He got fake mad at a chick. He throws his arms up. That's it. I'm mucking out of here.
I love it.
And he walks out.
It became like an iconic moment on the show, but nobody remembers that I was doing my yucks at the same time.
I didn't remember that either. And that, man, I don't think I remember hearing that they didn't know either what was going on, and they were all just kind of like. And I didn't realize you were the very next segment. I never heard that part of the story.
It was actually during the introduction of me that there was a weird exchange between him and Tom. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so it was literally as I was being introduced. I've watched the video since. He just takes the headphones off and slams them down and walks off the screen.
Oh, there's actual video of that?
Yeah. And Tom, you can see Tom and then they all quietly decide not to say anything about it while he's leaving. And I'm just going, and then the Falcons and the whatever. It's just.
Tom is such an incredibly talented and a wonderful guy. But he handles things. My favorite story is sort of a recent one. We had Mary Mac, before COVID, and when we had guests in the studio.
Right.
We had Mary Mac on. Mary Mac.
Yeah.
Mary Mac has a very unique, very clever, a very unique, sing-songy, quiet delivery. That is her style. So she was doing She was doing that, but for some reason it wasn't jiving with what Tom wanted as far as energy. And so we take a break, and out of nowhere, I'm sitting right next to Mary Mack. Now, Mary, you're going to have to speak up. Otherwise, the station will actually go off the air. If it hears nothing, the station actually goes off the air.
That's the pep talk.
And I was sitting there going, "What is he? She's going to be crushed." No, seriously, Mary, bring the volume up, because the station will actually, now Pat, you know this, if there's dead air for more than 5 or 6 seconds, the station goes off the air. And I didn't know that. And I'm sitting there like, oh, yeah, that was, yeah.
How'd she do? Did she just do it louder in the next segment? The same character?
Yes. I honestly felt a little bad for her, but you have to understand, Tom wants every second of that show to shine. He's a fight. Right. If my intro is too long to a song, if I happen to hit it when they're talking and it needs to go around again for me to start singing, he goes, "Hey, I guess we got another one of those long intros." And I'm like, he's just a fill in the blanks, boom, boom, boom kind of a guy. And when you work with that kind of perfection, you try to rise to the challenge. But when a poor comedian from the outside world comes into our world, it's like, yeah.
I was wondering, these guys are pros. They deal with comics all the time. But with somebody like Todd Barry, who's got a very slow, like the joke depends on these pauses in order for the whole thing to come together. When he does some wacky Zoo Crew show where they don't know his style, how does he ever survive a morning radio visit?
I don't know, and he probably doesn't, to be honest with you. Having done, I was on the wackiest morning zoo of all time. And we used to have horrible experiences with people that were very, very talented. Jake Johansson had an odd time on our show. Ellen DeGeneres didn't click one time. And our lead guy was a very brassy, Philadelphian. Well, actually, he's from Long Island guy, John DeBella back then. And we had some really awkward.
I know John DeBella. I do his show once in a while.
Yeah, well, he was the morning zoo with me for 6 years, 89 to 94.
I didn't put that together. I didn't realize that was
the
same movement.
He started that. There was another morning zoo before, I think, in New York, but we were the original successful morning zoo, and that was DeBella. DeBella, Mark the Shark, myself, and we had Earl Bailey, who's now on Sirius XM, and we had.
Great with me. He's very generous and understands the beats and the whole thing, and he
he gets it
my way, and he's been super good to me.
The people that worked for our show back then were the loud and brassy. Bobcat, Gilbert, they would come in and they'd kill. But if you had like a quirkier comedian, except for Emo, for some reason Emo killed on our morning zoo because DeBella had a real fondness for him and gave him that space.
Right.
But I saw John was also, he was kind of quick to kind of dismiss people. I saw Tim Allen at the Comedy Factory outlet right before he did his TV show. And I was asked to come down to the club to see him because the owner of the club wanted to get him on our morning zoo show. So this is Thursday. And he says, come on down to you got to see this guy. And I saw Tim Allen in a club do that act. And I was like, holy crap. And Tim meets me after the show. He goes, hey, you want to go out for a drink or something? I know I got to go. I have to get to work tomorrow. But I'm going to tell John, that we'd love to have you on the show. He goes, thank you. Thank you so much for coming down. And he's at the Days Inn on Delaware Avenue, and I get the phone number and everything. And our person is going to get a hold of you, and you can come at a certain time. Oh, thank you so much. I get to the show the next morning, and I rave about this Tim Allen guy. And DeBella goes, what, are you booking the show now? No, I don't need this Tim Allen guy. And now I got to call Tim Allen at the Days Inn a year before he's Home Improvement, Tim Allen, and tell him he's not worthy of our morning zoo show in a way that doesn't hurt his feelings.
Right.
I tell him the truth. I go, hey, look, our guy doesn't know you, and he's not like, he goes, Pat, I totally understand. I had to tell Tim Allen he wasn't ready for our morning.
I'm going to be just fine. This is my last Days In, motherfucker.
Oh my God. I never will forget that. You know what? And we still had a couple more years in the morning zoo when Home Improvement took off. And I used to always come in and go, hey, how about the ratings on that Home Improvement with Tim Allen? And he'd go, shut up. DeBella, well, you know DeBella.
I love that.
With that mustache, and he smoked cigarettes back then all the time. So I'll be quiet, stuff like that.
That's so funny. I think of him as a totally different character, but I didn't meet him until he was probably 60. You know what I mean? Like I knew him in a different era of his life.
Well, you knew DeBella was the guy that Stern took on first, right? You knew all about all that?
No, I don't know any of this.
Stern syndicated market. His first one was Philadelphia. We were number one, and Howard was in New York at the time. So when they came into our market, they beat him up, called him Baldy. They spent their whole show attacking John, and John for some reason never attacked back, which I don't think Philadelphia cared for. I had songs ready. I was ready to fight back.
Not a very Philly response.
No, Costaki, it wasn't, and it was a mistake. Now we held on for a couple of years, and we're still number one. But he came to our town, to Philadelphia, He came to Philadelphia and held big funerals with 20,000 people outside our studio, and they had a funeral for they put a fake DeBella in the casket, and
really
they were huge events. Huge events. They did two of them, I think, and they were. I can't believe how many people that he drew for these anti-Morning Zoo DeBella. And they used to prank call our show, and they'd get in. We had phone callers all the time, and it was a nightmare, to be honest with you. It wasn't fun to be part of at all.
That's fascinating. I didn't know any of this because I've sort of discovered DeBella just in the last few years, doing quick snaps here and there with the music.
Yeah, DeBella always treated comedians. We had a jam-packed show. He treated them very well. He was a wonderful audience. Yeah, he enjoyed. We had a wide diversity of people, but the comedians were what made our show really kind of shine. We had Seinfeld on before he even did any of the TV stuff. He was a regular. You can't believe the kind of people that we had when I look back now,
Oh, sure. Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's cool, man. So you're from a theater-y family, right? You had
yeah.
Tell me about that, because I had the opposite. I had two professor folks. You grew up in an actor and a theater professor, is that right?
Yeah, my dad went to Notre Dame, and then he went back to got his master's at Purdue, and then went back to his hometown of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where you're on with the Prospector up in Scranton, that area. Yeah, that's the area where I grew up. Where Prospector and I are buds. That's the area where I grew up, and so my dad was a college professor. He had tickets to the Metropolitan Opera every week. He drove into New York. He was a big Broadway guy, and he loved directing, and that's what I grew up with. And my mom was also an actress at Purdue, where they had met, and she would continue to do the local productions and stuff. But my dad didn't really like teaching that much at all. He did it to be able to direct. So I grew up in this, like my mom and dad doing stuff in the Music Man in the living room. They would do like what we would do one-nighters to get a couple $100. My parents would go out and do scenes from plays. So I always had Broadway music stuff going on, and I rebelled. And instead of playing a piano or a guitar, I became a jock until I heard Elton John and Benny and the Jets. And then my whole world exploded. I just started playing piano. And my mom and dad were like, what the hell? They just thought that they'd lost me to the dark side of sports. I was on a football team that was 11-0 when I was a sophomore. I lettered. I ran kickoffs and punts back. It was an incredible experience. And then who I really was, I mean, I just worked hard to become an athlete. Who I really was as a person was this. I was into music and theater and trying to be and being funny. And it all came one day when I heard Benny and the Jets in the car, and I'm playing the piano in the basement for like 7 hours, whenever I could, driving my whole family nuts, until my mom would say, you're getting pretty good at that. I think she actually said one time, that's what you're going to end up doing. And I was like, really? And from that moment on, I didn't play guitar till years later. It was all about the piano and just absorbing everything I could. And then I was always a closet singer. I wouldn't let my family know. I always kind of sang in private because, I was a rebel. I was a sports guy. Then my mom heard me. I was doing the dishes, and I think my mom heard me sing something from Oliver, and she was like, "What the?" Because I have a grandmother who was an opera singer, and I have all this vaudeville in my background. if only I'd started playing piano and guitar when I was 5 years old, like normal people,
Right.
I had a lot of catching up. I had a lot of catching up to do.
Wow, that's cool. So
Yeah.
you didn't have the problem of trying to explain why you wanted to write songs and tell jokes and
Oh
travel around
God,
and
no,
do radio.
just the opposite. You know what I had the problem with? Doing sports. My uncle, who was also taught theater, and I love my Uncle Jimmy. He's like such a funny guy too. He was mortified that I was involved in athletics. Now keep in mind, these guys were still Notre Dame football fans. They loved watching it, but they just didn't see. You have to understand, I broke my heel in 3 places. I fractured my neck and I broke my hand all in the course of from the 8th grade to my senior year because I was 5'8". I was tiny, and our team was huge, and I would just get killed. I mean, my butt. I don't even know how. I'm not that brave now. I can barely get on a plane now, let alone do the things I did back in when I was high school. I was just fearless, I guess. And I just got hurt so bad, which is why I would like to protect my son from doing, as much as I love football, to watch it and geez, even to play it still in the backyard. I hope my son doesn't have that same passion.
Yeah, right. So you're working on an album now, right? You're putting together songs for a thing that's coming out in January. Tell us about that.
Well, I waited for the longest time to kind of beg Tom to do it because things are different. There's no real money for CDs anymore. Everything's streaming, and there's no way to monetize. In the old days, Tom, they gave all their sales. They gave it away. They donated it, and they had money in to be able to use musicians though, and to do really finely crafted albums. So now I come along. I'm a full-time member of the show, and there's not really that kind of cash anymore for these things, but we still have a studio. And I just waited until the right moment when I had a collection of things I was really proud of. I had these 12 things that I played in the last year, finally crafted, done 3 or 4 times in the show. Tom would edit, we'd co-write, I'd write. And I finally had the nerve to go, hey, what do you think if I record these at the studio we own? And he goes, yeah, of course. He didn't even think twice about it.
Right.
And I said, here's the first things, the 3 things I have an idea for. Another load came in, Fat Elvis, and the Nobody Has Pubes Anymore song. So we did three the first day with John Mellencamp's band. And then we augmented those and overdubbed those, and we got them to a nice sheen and a nice polish. And Tom and I going back and forth. And then now we're 7 songs in. So
That's
all
great.
for me. I asked one day if I could have a band come in, and Tom said, yeah, let's get Mellencamp's guys to come in. And that was right at the start of COVID. So that was like in March, and no one was, those guys weren't touring, so they were around. And so we had them come in, and these songs are just, they're just coming out great. It's just wonderful. Alan Johnson's the guy who engineers and also is a producer on it. And he just works his butt off, changing little things. And he's just, these things, it's coming out great. I'm really excited about it.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, it's true.
How are you enjoying being on the show all the time? It's not, in the old days you would come in and do it now and again. Now you're a part of the machine. How is that?
Full time on that show where you have to invent yourself and be funny with these guys. Like I said before, they've seen every fastball. I'm pretty terrified every day in a good way. And the creativity comes out of desperation and deadline. At night I go, I'll get there, and he'll go, okay, what do you got? Here's what I got. And then right when we do that, and let's say it's wonderful, he comes in and he goes, hey, what else you got? And I'm like, I just knocked it out of the park. Internally, he wants more. And then I scribble out a little something more, and boom. And that became like a 4-song a day kind of thing, and which is incredible kind of. These aren't that easy to make funny. I mean, it's musical comedy. It can really bomb.
Of course.
You've got to,
right.
So I honestly go in there, man, I drive down there wide-eyed and ready to go to battle, because the challenge of that, there is nothing more exciting to me than that kind of terrified creativity. And you look back at what you did sometimes, and you're like, wow. Because I'll look back at video, I'll gingerly look back at video. I have a hard time watching myself. And then I'll go, oh, that was better than I thought. I thought I missed the chord on that thing. I didn't miss it at all. In my mind, it's magnified. You got the headphones on, you're in that situation. then when I kind of relax and look back on it, I go, oh, you're doing okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
man, when you're in there though, as you well know, it's just like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yes, it's scary.
Let's
I
just
remember
let,
I remember when I first started going in there, and I was like a kid. I was a middle act, working at Crackers
sure.
down the street. And you would go in, and at the time, they had these Velcro strips where they would put the affiliates on the wall.
I
And
remember
like, oh my God, I'm on in 150 cities. It was just
150
completely
cities. Yeah.
intimidating.
Yeah.
Uh,
If you think about that, which I do not, because, when we're doing larger shows, you and I, you know what I'm talking about. You look out and you go, whoa. And it kind of gives you a little, sometimes it intimidates me to where I'm not on my game in an intimate way. You got to be bigger, and the improv's kind of taken away, in a bigger theater kind of thing.
right,
And
right.
I don't necessarily like that. But if I had thought about the people that were listening to us now, I would crap myself. Like, I'll get a call from a buddy back in Eastern Pennsylvania. Hey, I heard you the other day. I'm like, wow, I didn't know my buddy had a 3-hour drive with us in the car. If I knew that, it would have made me incredibly nervous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's one of the fun things about this show is you'll get
isn't
an
it? It's
email
great.
or a text or a tweet, and they're people from all over the place. It's really cool.
Yeah, radio is such an intimate experience for someone who's in their car, let's say, or a trucker, for example. And when you get an email from them and you go, hey, you did this thing and you just killed me. I had to pull over to the side of the road. Nothing gets better than that, to get a simple email from someone alone. You get one email from one guy, and
Right.
it can make your whole freaking week.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I was trying to do some prep for this thing, and I just kept watching clips of you doing songs and being goofy. It's fucking engaging, man. My favorite is the Randy Newman stuff. It's so funny, so well done. You make it look so easy.
Well, I'm a huge Randy Newman fan, and that particular clip with the Randy Newman does the Beatles is, honest to God, last minute. We had a keyboard player in there, and I knew I could sing like Randy Newman and do the Beatle thing, and I said, just follow me. I had no idea that clip that he plays so well on it. It kind of lifted it up to another level. And then when we get to the na 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 na, which is not the melody of Hey Jude, it killed the whole room. But that guy followed, the particular ragtime version of the Hey Jude chord. So that was a wonderful moment, completely just goofing, not pre-prepared, completely off the cuff.
But I've seen other little beats where you're like on the way to something else, and someone goes, "What would Randy Newman say?" And you just go in.
Yeah.
You make it look easy to just play around with that.
Well, there are certain voices where if I'm not singing like myself, I have a tendency to feel a little freer with the improv. And when I'm just singing like myself, I'm so exposed. But if you can jump into a character, it's like putting a wig on. You can kind of you can loosen up a little bit. So whenever we can put a voice to an original song, it always seems to be better than just me delivering it by myself.
Right.
Yeah, I like doing the Leon Redbones and the Springsteens, where you can take a funny concept, and if you just whack it a little bit, you can get a bigger laugh out of it. It can be more engaging when you're in a different character.
Right. That's great, man. That's great to talk to you. Thanks for doing this.
You too. These are crazy times.
Oh,
crazy times,
aren't they? What
yeah.
is it? Are you back in the main room now? You're in the corner off to the left from Tom?
Well, we're doing a TV show locally, WISH, I think, 5 nights a week. So what we're doing is we're socially distancing still. So we have everybody in the main room, and I'm in this performance room where Krista used to be. So
Right.
That door locks, and I can play and bang away on the piano and rehearse, and I don't irritate anybody. I used to be in the corner, and I really couldn't. I had to, you can't in the break just start banging away. So I used to write without playing the music. Now I have the opportunity to bash away and not annoy the the break they're trying to have. Yeah, so I'm right behind Christy. I can see facial cues. Before I was down the hall and I couldn't really see anybody's. Like I really look to Tom to know when I want to start the thing or when he wants me to start it. And now I can get the facial cue. So things are starting to get a little bit better. I can't wait to see you walk in the door and sit down with us like the way it used to be and have guests actually. I don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, it ain't going to be soon. Oh, it's crazy.
It's not going to be soon, is it?
I don't think so. It's funny.
No.
When I talked to Pardo 2 weeks ago and prepping for that, he was my first cancellation of a real life event. We were supposed to have lunch, and then it was like mid-March, and we were both like, maybe not. And that was the beginning of the whole thing. And it was funny to see in the exchange. I said, I'm of two minds. We were talking about whether or not we were going to do gigs, and I go, I'm of two minds. I feel like I'm mad that the world is closing, and I also feel like it would be crazy to go somewhere right now. And I go, I don't know how it's going to be better in 6 months. And sure enough, I was rereading that email 6 months later, and it's not better.
That's exactly how I feel. I have a 9-year-old son. You have children also. If you think about being a trooper and providing for your family, but I've taken gigs, but the truth is, I'm like, man, I wouldn't mind a vaccine. I wouldn't mind not endangering my coworkers. So I don't know what to do, but I honestly have a hard time paying bills, quite frankly, without the life performing that you and I have built up to a point where we can make a living, and then it's been taken away. So when they do offer us gigs, I'm of the same mindset as you. Geez, I don't know if it's right yet, but.
I know. And Jimmy and I had this conversation off the air too. We were like, well, we have no judgment for whatever people are doing. Everyone's in a different sort of headspace and a different financial situation, but if we can avoid going for now, we're gonna, but you can't do it forever. It's at some point,
if I could avoid going, I honestly will until things are better. My ex-wife is a nurse, so we have to be careful. She's not been exposed. She gets tested a lot. She's negative. My son is homeschooled with the internet now. He did that. I homeschooled him last year. We are doing everything right. The one thing is the problem is accepting gigs. You're like, oh man, I do need to pay the electric bill, and I honestly don't know how I can handle it without performing, because it was just a huge chunk of what I depended on for everybody.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for all of us, it's been fascinating talking to comics, and then I go talk to some of my civilian buddies, and they're like, the business is booming, and now I get to stay home. They've never been happier.
Yeah. You know what bothers me? I did my first kind of outdoor thing in southern Indiana town, and it was a benefit, and I was being paid. And I get there, and everyone gets there socially distanced with masks and everything, but then once alcohol's involved, it's all bets are off. Everyone's at the bar talking to each other, and I went, you know what? I don't think anyone's quite ready for all this yet.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a delicate dance, the whole thing, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Goodness gracious. Well, stay safe, brother. It's great to talk to you for a beat. This is
you
my
too.
favorite thing about this is I get to talk to people that I like for an hour, at least 1 hour, one focused, real conversation with someone I like on a scheduled event. So thanks for doing it, man.
Thanks for having me.
I'll call you Tuesday. Try to fake a few laughs about my shitty Falcons or something, would you?
Hey, good luck with the Falcons this week, and we'll see you Tuesday.